what are you looking for as a developer from a future OEM? We talk, a lot of people always say we want competitors, we want competitors. I know what a competitor means to a consumer, but for a developer, what's the value add? What does a developer need to see from a competitor to be valuable? Because ultimately, we need content on a competitor, and that's going to come from a developer like yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, most developers are in between a rock and a hard place that way because without giving numbers, Oculus, let me put it this way, without the Quest, there is no serviceable VR market. Like full stop. The percentages, and we've broken this down many different ways. Yes, you can develop for Steam. Yes, you can develop for HTC or like those markets. But those markets are fractional. Like you could be it. So this is what starts affecting and influencing the size of the team that you can then build the size of the product.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who are like staunchly against Facebook being the dominant force in the market, they have a very small wedge to service. And it means that their games also have to be quite a bit smaller because they can only sustain a small group of developers to do that thing. And this is a problem because what it ends up turning out is small experiences that a lot of people are just not satisfied by. And it's kind of like a self-recurrent issue. So, if you have political leanings against Facebook, of course, that's, a difficult prospect for you. Okay, well, without Quest, there is no market. And I'll also mention Sony, but Sony, had a big serviceable market, but the retention went way down way fast. So, and whatever happens with the next version of PlayStation PSVR 2 changes the market again. But right now, there's the Quest 2 dominate the market in such a total way that to ignore it as a developer, especially if your studio is over 3 people, is a bit irresponsible. You have to look at that. You have to be realistic about who's propping up the market, who's pushing the most money in. I get that people want a competing product to the Quest and to what Facebook is doing, but you also have to recognize that they're selling headsets at a loss and I think that everybody kind of knows that.
Yeah.
Every single headset they sell, they lose a few $100s to the sale of that headset just to get that tech in your hands. No one can compete with that. No one, not HTC, not anybody. Not Valve, like no one can compete with that. So you really have to consider that. Like even as an enthusiast and a hobbyist, you have to go, okay, well, that's kind of the market reality of it. I competition is always good. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not defending anybody here. I'm just saying that this is the reality. So you have to look at the reality.
So oh man, I obviously I don't disagree with any of that. My thought is that I hear people say I want a competitor, this and that. Is there anything a competitor can do from a developer's mindset that would entice developers to put forward the effort on a device that I don't think anyone else is going to come selling at a loss? So they're going to have to come with some other type of benefit to attract developers to build content for their platforms. For example, correct me if I'm wrong, armchair in here. I don't think there's much incentives for a developer right now to make a game for Steam VR. There's no visibility. Your player base is going to be a fraction of what it is for the Quest. Could a competitor come and make such a visible storefront that may entice a developer to build for a platform that would only have a fraction of the audience of a Quest, but the visibility would be much better than, say, Steam VR?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question because it kind of ties into storefronts in general. Like, so right now, obviously the 2 competing storefronts that kind of count in this scenario are Steam VR, and the Oculus storefront, and how those things are curated is really fascinating. So Oculus leans heavily on curation, as everybody knows. They curate, they kind of put the best things they can in front of people so that it gives VR first timers the best possible experience they can get to get them hooked on the technology, keep them buying, keep them playing. That's their strategy, and it works. You can't argue with the numbers. It's working. On the Steam side, you have on the Oculus side, you have it's kind of like a churn of the same developers doing really well there, right? Part of that is curation. Part of it is legitimately because those games are good.
Mm-hmm.
Go, and then you have App Labs, which is kind of hidden and sectioned off in a weird way, right? Go to the Steam side, you have kind of the opposite but same problem. You have 10 or so of the same developers turning in the top 10 list of bestsellers all the time. It's curated by consumers, but it still has a weird filter that sort of highlights the things that have always been working.
Yes.
Sorry, phone's ringing here.
Actually, well, I'm going to pull, keep going. It
Yeah,
might mess up the
yeah,
screen for a second, but I'm actually, while you're talking, going to pull up kind of the top Steam VR stuff. I'm just curious to look at that while you're
yeah.
talking.
If you kind of follow it for a month, go look every day, you'll see the same kind of turn of the same product. So on Steam, the problem is if I'm a new developer and I built a new game for Steam, I drop it on Steam. Guess what? It gets buried by the same 10 developers. It always gets buried by. Same problem, different, like inverted strategy. So I really believe that both of those stores would highly benefit from kind of doing a bit of both in both places. Like Oculus should really have here's our top 10 curated things for first time users. Do this and you're guaranteed to be hooked on VR. Below that, there's a fan or consumer curated list of things that people like, right? And so you're getting both aggregates. I believe the same thing on Steam because VR is still in a tender spot. Like we're still trying to get people onboarded. And I think Steam would also benefit from here is the top 10 things we think you should play first if you're new to VR, because this is going to make the biggest impact on you and keep you putting money into the system. And then there's also the fan curated list of things that people like just represent both. To me it seems like a simple solution to a complicated problem. And I'm sorry, that was a tangent from what you just said.
No, go ahead.
The incentives, like for it, like company that has the capability to do that at scale, maybe Epic, if they pushed on the VR side harder and they did other things there, that could be one. But what are the incentives? They basically an OEM or a storefront would have to pay the developer a premium for being there because they can't compete with what exists already, is kind of the bottom line.
Hit that subscribe button to stay on top of the daily clips or catch the debates and fireside chats live on the main channel down in the video description. See you next time, Space Cowboys.